Today we're going to talk a little bit about organizational change, and we're going to talk about my change model that I talk about in my book. Okay, any academics in the room? We've got one. All right, 2.5, 3, maybe 4. Okay, good. So I've got a couple of examples in both, and it's important to establish that because a lot of differences between industry and academics. And I'm a latecomer to academics. I spent my first 15 or so years working in industry, and so that's where I really got hooked on how does change work and why does it not so many times, and what can leaders do about that, right? And so we want to acknowledge that in higher ed, they are what's called a loosely coupled systems. There's a lot of silos that work independently, and so there's a lot of different things that go on there. So I just wanted to identify, anybody here married to an academic? You get to live in both worlds. Oh my goodness, there you go. All right, so as we talk about change and we talk about implementing change, you're going to have reactions like this, right? We're going to get more into what is that blue folder later on, okay? But what we want to do is we want to be able to change it to something like this. When I was looking at stock images, I was looking at people that were so excited, and I thought, yeah, probably not, right? But this, if we could get this would be great, right, when we're trying to introduce change. And so as we go forward, like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that blue folder. But I want to do some establishing kind of lingo here first, right? So change. What do I mean when I talk about change? And it might sound like a simplistic thing to understand, but let's talk about the other day. So I went to the doctor's, okay? And the doctor said to me, you know, Stacy, we're not 29 anymore. I was a little offended by that, but I get it, you know. So we're not 29 anymore, right? So he says to me, you know, you miss a day of your exercise program, or you go out and eat too much, or whatever. He said, we're past the time when we can do that. You have to, really be on it now, right? And so I put that out to you all. You go to the doctor. I'm sure they tell you things and to try and change things, right, to bring it home a little bit. And then I did some research, like how many doctors tell their people to change, right? And the result is a lot of doctors tell their patients to change a lot of the time. And how many of them actually listen? Well, 1 in 7 actually listen. Even if it's you need to change your diet or you're going to have a heart attack, 1 in 7 listen. You need to change your diet or you're going to have major surgery, 1 in 7 listen, right? And we know 70% of change efforts fail, okay? So this all comes back to us as humans, and why is it if we're faced with change or die and we're not changing, then how do you expect your employees to change? How do you expect to lead people through change, right? And it all comes back to us as humans because we like what's called homeostasis. We want to be just like we are. It's easy, right? I get up in the morning, put on my coffee, have my yogurt, put the kids in the car, drop them off, get to work. I do what I do, get back in the car, right? Plug and play every day, okay? Now what's happening is you're asking me to put some sort of disruption in my day. And I've got to figure it out. I have to learn how to do it. If I'm not going out to dinner at night, then I got to cook. But I can't just cook. I have to go to the store. But before I go to the store, I have to plan my meals. So there's a lot that's involved that I have to learn when I'm going to change something. So changing from the blue folder today to using the red folder tomorrow may not seem like a huge change, but sometimes it really is because we come in during the day. We're used to using that blue folder over and over. Now I'm being asked to use that red folder. I got to stop and think about why I'm doing it, and it's really a pain to me. And you know what? I wonder, are we going to keep using that red folder? Because the last time we tried that, we went right back to the blue folder. So are they serious about the change this time? Right? So think about that from the leader's perspective. The other thing we need to talk about is 2 types of change. So there's unplanned change and there's planned change. We're going to talk a little bit today about unplanned change, about 30 seconds. But most of today is about planned change. Unplanned changes are those things, didn't see that coming, right? So COVID-19, hate to bring that up, didn't see that coming. Huge disruption into everything. Okay? It could be a fire. We had a fire at the University of Scranton last semester, and it was one of our mission houses, and they give out clothing and so forth to men who are in need. And that building caught on fire. So that disrupted that particular organization. But in my department, I mean, we got a memo about it, but it was rolling forward, right? It didn't affect us at all, okay? That's one of the advantages of those loosely coupled systems where these other systems within the bigger system can just keep moving forward. If that was in a manufacturing plant and your line goes down, you've got a total disruption of what's going on in your facility, right? So today we're going to talk about plan change. Plan change is we recognize that something's amiss. We've got to fix it. We come up with a plan to do so, and we move forward to do so. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I've got two stories for you today. The first one is this department chair. They're hiring a new faculty member in this department. And the department chair sends an email out to all the faculty and says, I need somebody to chair the search committee. 3 days go by, 5 days go by, week and a half, crickets, nothing, okay? So this chair's friend who works in the department comes to the chair and says, hey, did you get anybody to do that yet? Nope. Can I do it? Sure. So the friend sends out an email to all of the colleagues and says, in my capacity as chair of the search committee, I need you to blah, 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 okay? Forgot to tell you something. So this friend of the chair totally undermines every other faculty member in the department, prevented a few of them from getting a promotion, and I could go on, okay? So I think you can gather what happens next after they get this email. So the faculty not only respond to the email, they actually get out of their chairs, right, and walk to the chair's office and say, what's going on? Why weren't we included? We didn't have a vote on this, okay? So the chair says to his secretary, please send out an email. We're going to have a department meeting. Anybody who wants to be on the ballot will vote on it. They get into the department meeting, they pull up the ballot, and guess what? Nobody else's name is on it, just his friend, okay? So the chair looks at this and laughs and says, okay, this is ridiculous, right? So if you're really upset about this and you want to be considered as the chair, just write your name in and we'll count up the ballots. So at the end of the day, they counted up the ballots. Nobody else wanted to do it, and they all voted. Every one of them voted yes for the other person. Any ideas what went on there? What was that all about? Any thoughts?
It's a lack of communication.
Lack of communication, right? Yep. What else is going on there?
They want buy-in, they want to be heard.
They want to be heard. They want to have a voice, right? Exactly. And the trust factor, okay? The trust in that chair, because this is a friend who's really betrayed everybody else in the department. So a couple of precursors to my model. This is the work, right? This is the, I got to plan my menu. I've got to eat healthier. I've got to cook food. I've got to stick to my exercise plan, right? But one of the key things that we find with leaders is that trust aspect. Do your people trust you? Because if they can't trust you, they don't know whether the red folder is really going to work or if you're just going to forget about the red folder, right? And that's a real simplistic thing where every day we're making these little changes. But if you make bigger changes, that's bigger stakes, okay? Some of the people that I've worked with and people I've interviewed, some leaders, they tell me, I don't have time in the day to make changes or to even brush my teeth. So if they want me to really do this, I'll do it for them, but they have to show me that it's going to be valuable and not sit in somebody's drawer, right? So some of the things that people are looking for in an organization are things like to participate, to be involved, right? To be empowered, to have a voice. And one of the things you really have to recognize is that everybody in your organization is a social influencer of other people in that organization, right? So they all have their networks, and they all talk to each other, okay? And they're going to socially influence each other as to the relevance of what this change is that you want to make. One of the other things that your job is as a leader is to provide all of these things. Like I said, it's a lot of work, right? What is the vision that you have for this change? How is it going to affect the company? Why is it better than what you have today? Making sure that your people are clear on this value and making sure that they really understand what's going on, the relevance to them, reducing any questions, ambiguity, or uncertainty that they have, because the number one thing ambiguity and uncertainty does is cause us to think about, gee, is this going to affect my job? Like, will I have one? And we know when people are focused on worrying about their job, productivity goes down the tubes, right? Feedback, giving people feedback about what's happening, monitoring that communication environment. So the entire organization is an environment of communicators in one way or the other. The water cooler, before meetings, in the hallway. We're talking to each other all day long about what's going on and trying to make sense of why we're having this change. Leaders also need to make sure that they're keeping up that momentum. One of the key things I hear from employees about why their change didn't work was things like, just stop showing up on the agenda. Nobody ever talked about it anymore. I didn't know they still wanted us to do this. Meanwhile, I'm talking to the leader who's saying, I don't know why anybody's not doing this, right? So making sure it's a priority, that it's urgent for your people, and that you provide the resources for them, really important. So again, this is all the pre-work that needs to be done. We're going to talk a little bit and take a look at the model. So again, if this is the organization, the communication environment surrounds everything. We're talking with each other, we're talking one-on-one, we're talking in small groups, and we're trying to make sense of what's going on with this organizational change. At some point as the leader, you've decided you're going to make a change, you've worked in your groups to determine what that change is going to be, and you're ready to make your announcements. So that's really the first stage, is making your employees aware of this change in whatever way you decide to do that. The second part of this is your employees are going to have some sort of initial gut reaction. You're going to have some over here who say, I love this leader, I'll do anything that they want to do. You're going to have some over here who are going to say, can't stand this person, not doing anything they want to do. But most of the people are going to be here in the middle. And those are the people that you really need to be able to get to and understand where they're coming from, right? Because what they're trying to do is think in their minds, okay, we're going to the red folder. I really like the blue folder. Why the red folder? I really don't understand. So they're trying to make sense of what the decision and thought process was. The next thing they're going to do is a greater sense of sense-making. Okay, so they're going to go out and start to talk to other people in the organization. They're going to talk to their friends, people in the network, people they see in the hallway. Did you like the blue folder? I like the blue folder. Did you like the blue folder? You didn't like the blue folder. Tell me more. Why didn't you like the blue folder? You think the red folder's going to work? Right? So you want to get to those people. We used to call them gatekeepers, right? Now we call them social influencers. These are the people who can help you make or break your campaign within the organization. But the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to have to choose, right? So are they going to choose to go along with your change program, or are they going to choose to resist? Now, maybe next year we could do another program on resistance and why it's so good for the organization, right? So if you're finding resistance, it's a good thing, but you have to know how to use that resistance to overcome what the problems are and to fix whatever it is in your change program that might not be working. So you really want them to maybe go along, but I don't know about you. I would prefer, instead of going along, to get them to buy into my ideas and what we want this change program to really do, okay? And once they go along or they buy into the program, this bottom area, this choice evaluation area, this is where that leader really makes or breaks that trusting relationship with their people, okay? Because what's going to happen is you're going to have some other change program down the road, and you're going to go through this cycle again and again and again. And you don't want to get to the part where you're launching yet another folder, or maybe you're not using folders this time, but the blue folder or the red folder, it's going away and we're going to have something else. So you've got to have some trust with your people that they need to come with you and trust you that this is the best thing for the organization. Right, so that choice evaluation on the bottom, you can almost think of it like buying a new car, right, or a car. You have choice A and B, maybe both of them you think are pretty equal, and you have three things that are going to happen. Either you're going to buy car A, and you're never again going to think about car B because car A is so great, or you're going to buy car A, and you're going to dislike it so much that you wish you bought car B, or you're going to keep comparing the two. Right? We want to go with point A, where you buy car A and you stick with it and you never think about car B again. And that's what you want to do. You want to build up that trust in the relationship with your employees so that when they get back to where you're launching another change campaign, instead of having a choice, and even instead of going through that sense-making process with their peers, that what happens is they develop this commitment to you as the leader and to the organization so that they just buy right into that change. Well, this has been great. My name is Stacy Smulowitz. I thank you so much for coming. My book can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online, and I've also left some flyers. My fabulous publisher has given us a great discount. I told them this is my hometown, these are my people, so give them something good. I would love to hear any questions that you have.
You didn't address anything about what's in it for me. I always found that was a very important part of implementing change in an organization. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. So part of this, let me go back here. Part of this whole preparation stage is relationship building, okay? And so as you build your relationship, you need to figure out what is important to the people who work for you. Why do they work there beyond the paycheck? You know, there may be some organizations where the value and the meaning of just working there is a lot to them, but they still have to have reasons for why they want to be there, right? And so you need to figure out what it is that will motivate these people, you know, and you do that through relationship building. But yeah, that's very integral to any change program. Any business, really. And actually, the person who spoke before me, I would love to work for him, right? He sounds like he's that type of person who really tries to get to know people, but you do that through relationship building.
Does the way you implement change depending on your leadership style?
Definitely, yes. So, you know, everybody has a different leadership style. Whether you know it or not, you have a leadership style. You know, and I think the research really romanticizes certain leadership styles, like transformational. We hear about that a lot. We hear about authentic leadership, the service leadership. You know, when I look at leaders, I see human beings who make mistakes, try really hard, and care about their organizations. And sometimes they're that, and sometimes they're a bunch of different leadership styles. But it does change. I mean, I think the one thing to keep in mind, these precursors, the things that you need to do to build those relationships with your employees is super important, no matter what type of leadership style you have. But one of the things I've learned along the way from talking with a lot of leaders who've done successful change programs is if you have to know yourself first, right? So you need to know, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and if you know truly that you can't be that relationship person, then you need to find somebody who can do that for you. Like anything else, right? The person who spoke before me was talking about finding people to fill in all these little areas, right? You need to figure out, my strengths are here, this is what I need to focus on, and if my weakness is this, then I need to focus on that and get somebody in to do that for me.
I think a really important thing you have there is empowerment, and I think that's a really difficult thing as a leader, to have people feel empowered. Like they're like, well, yeah, I want to be able to speak up and do things, but also you're the leader, and I'm afraid to speak over you and overstep my bounds. Like, how do you find that balance, regardless of leadership type?
Again, it comes to relationship, right? And a lot of that has to do with size of the organization. So, you know, you have an organization like the University of Scranton, huge, or, you know, I don't want to say huge, large organization. My access to our president is really small. I mean, I'm the chair of a department, and I usually end up in a meeting with him once a year. And other times, you know, I'll see him. He knows who I am. I know who. So if I see him at something, and he'll say, "Oh yeah, you're the chair of the communication department." Yeah. You know, we'll have a nice little chat for a couple minutes, right? But empowerment's really important. Like, I need to feel as an employee that my ideas are valued and that I can move forward with things. I feel as the chair of my department that we come up with things and we can move forward and go ahead and do that. And I think that is sort of the culture that we have built in our organization. And so that empowerment comes through leadership, their vision, the culture of the organization. There's a lot of different moving parts for that. No simple answer for any of this, right?
Yeah, talk a lot about change within a group or a department. How about interdepartmental type of change, right? So could you talk a little bit about that, some of the best practices that you've seen? So, for example, maybe it's a human resource change in a process that needs to get reverberated through the whole organization itself. Could you talk about that a little bit? Some of the best practices from that perspective?
Sure, absolutely. So again, you know, going back to all of these things that we've talked about, right? The relationship has to be there, the culture has to be there. But I've worked for organizations where we've done maybe not an HR, but an ERP-wide, you know, could be anything, goes across all these divisions. And it's really getting those department leaders on board with each other, first of all, you know, and that's one of the differences between higher ed and industry, where higher ed, we can function pretty much independently of all the other organizations, where industry really, you're so interconnected. And so getting those leaders on board, first of all, but then also knowing those leaders, knowing the people who work for them and being able to find out where are their networks, what are they talking about? Because certainly somebody in their business unit is going to know somebody in the next business unit. You're going to have to work together. How do we work together already? How can we make that work? So there's a lot of different components that go into that.